My name is Elena Martin. I am 35 years old, a single mother of two, and I never thought I would be forced to walk out of my own parents' anniversary party because of something my teenage daughter discovered. That night was supposed to be beautiful. It was the celebration of 45 years of marriage between my parents, William and Grace Martin. The event took place in Napa Valley inside one of those luxurious hotels you only see in wedding magazines. The chandeliers sparkled like stars. The music was gentle, the laughter seemed genuine. It should have been a perfect evening. I had spent weeks preparing for it. I altered an old navy gown so it would still fit after the weight I lost during my divorce. I helped review the guest list, organized flower arrangements, even wrote a poem that I planned to read after dinner. I told myself this night was about love, about legacy, about family coming together. But when the anniversary cake rolled out, my 14-year-old daughter Jasmine suddenly leaned toward me. Her hand tightened on my wrist. Her voice was low and urgent. "Mom, we need to go. Now." I stared at her confused. "Why?" Her eyes locked on mine. "I'll tell you in the car. We left before dessert." My parents watched us go, their expressions unreadable. I remember Jasmine sitting beside me in silence as I drove away from the hotel, her face pale, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. After a few minutes, I asked her again, "What happened?" She turned to me slowly and said, "You really didn't catch what they were doing." And then she told me everything. I have always been the dutiful daughter, the one who got good grades, who never talked back, who tried to make my parents proud in the quietest ways possible. I studied literature because it moved me, not because it impressed anyone. My father, a retired cardiac surgeon, never truly understood why I would choose books over biology. My mother, the co-founder of a major arts charity, cared more about appearances than authenticity. Still, I tried. I became a professor at a small liberal arts college in Northern California. I married someone they approved of, David Connors. He was smart, charming, financially stable, and most importantly, from a family my parents respected. They didn't just tolerate David, they adored him. In public, we were perfect. Two bright professionals raising two beautiful children, but behind closed doors, David began to change. He became dismissive, then manipulative, then cruel. The divorce came after I discovered his affair with a 25-year-old marketing associate named Hannah. The betrayal was sharp but not surprising. What stunned me more was how my parents responded. They weren't angry at him, they were disappointed in me. "You should have tried harder. Marriage is work. Are you really going to break apart your children's lives over one mistake?" That was what my father said the day I moved out of the house David and I shared, the house my parents helped us buy. Since the divorce, my life had narrowed. I now lived in a modest townhouse with my daughter Jasmine and my son Leo, who had just turned 7. I balanced lectures with late-night grading and side gigs editing academic manuscripts to make ends meet. Jasmine adjusted quickly. She became more observant, more guarded. Leo was too young to grasp the full picture. To him, weekends with Dad just meant more screen time and better snacks. And my parents, well, they changed, or at least pretended to. They began inviting me over for Sunday dinners again. They praised my resilience in front of their friends. They bought Leo expensive gifts and told him how proud they were of his drawings. But Jasmine didn't trust it. Not for a second. One evening, while I was washing dishes, she sat at the kitchen table and said, "They're planning something, Mom. I can feel it. They don't look at you like they used to. They look at you like a project they want to fix." I laughed nervously. "You're being dramatic." She didn't argue, just stared out the window and said, "Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only one paying attention." Then came the invitation, a formal card in thick ivory paper. "Dr. William and Grace Martin request the honor of your presence at a celebration of 45 years of marriage. Dress code formal. Location, the Rosemont Hotel, Napa Valley." I remember holding that card and thinking, maybe this is the moment we heal. Maybe this time I'll feel like their daughter again, not their disappointment. Jasmine was hesitant from the start. "Do I have to go? It's just one night," I told her. "For them." "Please," she agreed. But I noticed how stiff her smile became when I handed her the red dress my mother had mailed just for her. "It'll make Grandma happy," I said. Jasmine held it up. "It's not my style. I sighed. Just a few hours? She nodded. But I saw the way she folded the dress not with care, but with quiet defiance. I should have listened. I should have paid closer attention. Instead, I was too busy trying to prove that I belonged in a family that had already decided I didn't. The evening of the party arrived with a kind of shimmering tension. Jasmine emerged from her room in the red dress, her long dark curls falling neatly over her shoulders. She looked stunning and older than 14. I smiled, told her how beautiful she was, and she shrugged, muttering that it was just a dress. Leo wore a little blazer with sneakers and beamed with pride. As we pulled into the driveway of the Rosemont, I felt my stomach tighten. The hotel was grand, almost theatrical, with tall glass windows that reflected the deep golds and purples of the setting sun. Valets moved quickly, opening doors, greeting guests with scripted warmth. Inside, everything sparkled. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks. Classical music floated through the air from a live quartet stationed in the corner. Waiters glided between guests with trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres. The ballroom smelled like roses and money. My parents stood near the entrance, radiant and rehearsed. My father looked every bit the retired heart surgeon turned patriarch. My mother's silver gown shimmered as she hugged guests and nodded graciously. When she saw us, her smile stretched just slightly too wide. "Elena, darling, you look comfortable." And Jasmine, oh my, that dress suits you better than I expected. I watched Jasmine's jaw tighten. My father barely looked at me before scooping up Leo with exaggerated affection. "There's my favorite boy. Got a front row seat waiting just for you." He winked and guided Leo toward the head table. I opened my mouth to speak, but Jasmine gently touched my elbow. "Let him go," she whispered. "Let's just see how this plays out." Her tone was off, like she knew something I didn't. I tried to shake the feeling. This was their night, a celebration. I should be gracious. I should rise above the past. That's what I kept telling myself. The room filled quickly with familiar and unfamiliar faces. My parents' friends from the hospital board, donors from the Arts Foundation, old family acquaintances. I smiled, made polite conversation, responded to comments about my divorce with carefully chosen words. Yes, it's been a year now. The kids are adjusting. No, I haven't started dating again. It's been a time for reflection. I hated how practiced I sounded, as though I had been trained to make my life palatable. I moved through the crowd, glass of wine in hand, when I saw them. David and Hannah. He wore a tailored suit, his tie a shade of navy that used to be my favorite. Hannah stood tall beside him, her blonde hair pinned elegantly, her dress clearly designer. I stopped walking. My breath caught. Jasmine appeared at my side and whispered, "You didn't know they were coming." I shook my head slowly. "Did you?" She didn't answer. My parents greeted David and Hannah with open arms. My mother kissed Hannah's cheek. My father clapped David on the back like a long-lost son. I watched frozen as they ushered them to a table near the front. Jasmine's voice was low. They invited him Mom. On purpose. I nodded barely. My heart thudded in my chest. Why? Why would they do this? I stood there, a forgotten guest at my own family's celebration, watching the man who betrayed me be embraced like a hero. Jasmine pulled out her phone. I saw her typing quickly, her eyes scanning the room. She was watching something, tracking something, but I didn't ask. I just took another sip of wine and told myself to survive the evening with dignity. Leo sat proudly between my father and David at the head table. They talked animatedly, laughed, posed for photos with him. My mother hovered nearby, glowing with approval. Jasmine wandered the room with a stillness I had come to recognize as alertness. She wasn't socializing. She was observing. Her eyes followed my father, then David, then occasionally met mine with something like warning. I tried to smile to pretend nothing was wrong, but deep down, something was cracking. I felt like I was walking through a play where everyone had rehearsed their lines but me, and the spotlight was slowly turning away. About halfway through dinner, I noticed Jasmine had barely touched her food. She pushed the vegetables around with her fork, eyes flicking constantly between the head table and a side hallway near the back of the room. I leaned closer and asked if she was feeling okay. She nodded too quickly. Fine. Just tired. But I knew that look. The same look she gave when she noticed something out of place when her brain was trying to piece together a puzzle she wasn't ready to share. I tried to follow her gaze. My father was whispering something to David while Leo laughed between them holding a small toy he must have been given as a party favor. My mother stood behind them, smiling at the photographer who was circling the table, capturing what she must have thought was the perfect family moment. But Jasmine and I weren't in it, not even close. I looked down the long table. Our seats were tucked near the end, closer to the staff entrance than the center of the room. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was being sensitive, that this night was not about me. Then I noticed Jasmine typing something into her phone again. She sent a message and tucked it quickly into her purse. I gave her a look. "Who are you texting?" She hesitated. "Just a friend." "Mom, can I step out for a second?" "The noise is giving me a headache." I looked at her carefully. "Be quick," I said. She nodded and stood smoothing her dress and disappeared through the side hallway. I tried to focus on the conversations around me on the wine, on pretending this was all fine. But my stomach had that same tight pull it had the day David told me he was moving out. I felt it again when Jasmine returned 15 minutes later. Her expression had changed. Her face was still calm, but her eyes were sharper, more intense. She sat down without a word and looked straight ahead. I leaned over and asked, "Everything all right?" She nodded once. "Just keep your ears open. Listen to what they're saying, not what they're pretending to say." I furrowed my brow. "Jasmine, what are you talking about?" She didn't respond. Instead, she looked toward the stage where a staff member was handing my father a microphone. He tapped it twice, then raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen!" I watched Jasmine's fingers tighten on the edge of the tablecloth. She was bracing herself. So was I. My father stood confidently in front of the crowd, the kind of presence he had mastered after decades of leading medical boards and charity galas. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady and commanding. "Grace and I are overwhelmed by your love and support. 45 years ago, we built something together. Not just a marriage, but a family, a future, a legacy." He turned slightly to look at my mother, who beamed on cue. "Marriage," he continued, "is not about perfection. It's about partnership. It's about investing in something bigger than yourself. And that's what tonight is about. Investing in the future." He gestured toward David and Leo, who stood nearby. I watched in disbelief as David took the stage with Leo beside him, his hand resting lightly on my son's shoulder. Jasmine leaned in closer and whispered, "Watch this." I barely breathed as my father continued. "This young man," he said, nodding to David, "has been like a son to us for many years. Even after difficult changes, he remained committed to the values our family holds dear." David smiled, modest and controlled. "And this little one," my father said, ruffling Leo's hair, "is the future of the Martin name. He is bright, kind, full of potential. We are proud to nurture that." The applause was polite, even warm, but in my ears it sounded distant. I looked around for Jasmine. She was no longer beside me. I spotted her near the projector at the back of the room, talking quietly to a hotel staff member. Then the lights dimmed. A slideshow began on the screen behind the stage. Images of my parents flashed in slow succession. Their wedding day, their travels, their work, their awards. Then family photos. My brother and his family appeared often. David showed up in multiple frames, some recent. Leo was in many, always smiling, always in the center. I waited for photos of me and Jasmine. There were two. One from over a decade ago at a beach. Another blurry and cropped at a fundraiser. That was it. Hannah, David's fiancée, appeared in more images than I did. I felt cold, erased. Jasmine returned and sat down beside me, her arms crossed tightly. "Do you see it now?" she asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. My mother returned to the microphone. "Thank you all," she said. "And now, for dessert and a few announcements we are thrilled to share." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. She leaned in. "If they announce anything about Leo, we leave, immediately." I looked at her confused. "What? Why?" She didn't answer. She just kept her eyes fixed on the stage, lips pressed tightly together, fists clenched in her lap. Something terrible was coming. I could feel it, and she already knew. As the servers brought out trays of delicate desserts and champagne flutes for toasts, Jasmine suddenly stood up. Her movements were calm but deliberate. She leaned down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, we need to go. Now." I stared up at her confused. "Jasmine, what's going on?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the head table where David was now seated beside my father with Leo between them, the three of them laughing over something. I turned back to Jasmine. "Please tell me what's going on." Her voice was firmer this time. "I'll explain everything in the car, but we cannot stay for what they are about to announce. Please trust me." Something in her tone measured urgent unfamiliar cut through my hesitation. I nodded. "Okay, let me get Leo." I moved toward the front of the room, weaving between tables, offering polite goodbyes to anyone who tried to stop me. My mother intercepted me halfway there. "Elena, where are you going?" "Jasmine isn't feeling well." I lied. "We're heading home early." My mother's lips tightened. "Well, can't she stay with one of the staff while you and Leo remain for the announcement?" "It's important, dear." Her tone was too firm, too final. I felt a chill rise up my spine. What announcement? "Just some family news," she said. "Nothing to concern yourself with." I didn't respond. I walked past her toward Leo, who was mid-laugh beside David. As I approached, David stood up smoothly, blocking my path. "Leaving already?" He asked, his smile tight. "Your father was hoping to talk about Leo's schooling." Another time I said, my voice flat. He tilted his head. "Don't be difficult, Elena. This is about his future. Your parents are trying to help, since you're clearly struggling financially." His eyes slid down to my second-hand dress, unspoken judgment in his expression. That was the moment Jasmine appeared beside me again, her hand gripping mine. "We're leaving," she said. "Now. Leo, take Mom's hand." Leo looked confused, but obediently reached for me. As we made our way to the exit, I caught snippets of a conversation from a group of my father's colleagues. "Transfer should be easy once the custody shift is filed. Name on trust finalized before end of quarter." I turned toward Jasmine. "What does that mean?" She shook her head. "I'll explain in the car. Just keep walking." My father caught up to us at the doors. "Elena, this is highly inappropriate. There are announcements, guests, arrangements." "I'm sorry, Dad, Jasmine isn't feeling well." He barely looked at her. "Then let her go with someone else. You and Leo should stay, for the business part of the evening." The way he said business made something tighten in my chest. "Whatever it is, can wait." "We're leaving." His jaw clenched. This is exactly the kind of impulsive behavior that concerns us. David would never walk out on a night like this. Nathan put his personal feelings into his assistant. I snapped, then corrected myself. "David." My father leaned in close, his voice cold. "We're trying to protect Leo from your emotional decisions. If you cooperate, this can all be smooth." "What decisions?" I asked. He straightened, composed his face as another guest approached. "We'll talk when you're calm." Jasmine pulled at my sleeve. "Now, Mom, please." I looked at her, and in her eyes I saw something more than urgency. I saw fear. Real, bone-deep fear. That was all it took. I turned away from my father and walked with my children through the tall glass doors of the Rosemont Hotel. The warm summer air hit my face like a revelation. Something was deeply wrong, and whatever it was, Jasmine already knew. The car ride was quiet at first. Jasmine sat rigidly beside me, staring straight ahead, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Leo was in the back seat, humming softly to himself, playing with the small wooden airplane he had received as a party favor. I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding louder than the tires against the road. After 10 minutes, I finally spoke. "Jasmine, talk to me. What is going on?" Her eyes didn't leave the road in front of us. "Not yet. Let him fall asleep first." Another 5 minutes passed before Leo's head drooped to one side, his breathing deep and slow. Jasmine exhaled, then reached into her small purse and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and opened a folder labeled Documents. Then she turned the screen toward me. "I found these in the side office at the hotel. Grandpa keeps a briefcase there. I overheard him and David talking earlier. I wanted to know what they were hiding." I glanced at the screen. There were photos of legal documents, property transfer forms, custody modification petitions. One document showed a signature line already filled in with David's name. Another showed plans to restructure the trust my parents had once promised would be equally shared between their grandchildren. Except the only beneficiary listed was Leo. Jasmine continued. They're trying to move everything into David's name. The house, the investments, even Grandpa's voting power on the charity board. And they want to change custody so that David has full control of Leo's education and financial accounts. I stared at the phone, my throat dry. That doesn't make sense. How would they even do that? You still have custody. Jasmine opened another folder and played an audio recording. My father's voice came through first calm and clipped. Elena's too emotional. She doesn't have the long-term vision this family requires. This divorce gives us the opportunity to correct the course. David's aligned with our values. David's voice followed. With my name on the deed and Leo listed as my dependent, we'll have full control over the property and school choice. Elena's objections will look like instability. My mother's voice chimed in. She's always been impulsive. Remember the time she wanted to quit her job and write a novel. This is for Leo's own good. I slammed on the brakes and pulled the car into an empty parking lot. I turned to Jasmine, barely able to breathe. You recorded this. She nodded. I also sent copies to Aunt Margaret. She's been helping me. She's the one who told me to watch for signs. Signs like them erasing you from the photo slideshow, promoting David publicly, talking about Leo's future without you. I stared at my daughter, stunned. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Her voice cracked. Because I wasn't sure you'd believe me. You always want to see the best in them. I closed my eyes, feeling shame burn through me. And now? Jasmine looked at me steady and unblinking. Now, we fight back. Quietly. Carefully. But we don't let them take Leo. Or erase you. Or pretend that their version of this family is the only one that matters. I reached across the console and took her hand. I'm sorry, she squeezed back. Just promise me you'll listen this time. All of it. I nodded. I will. That night, after putting Leo to bed and making sure Jasmine was asleep on the couch with her phone still in hand, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a legal pad in front of me. My mind raced as I reviewed every document Jasmine had photographed, every recording she had captured, every moment from the party that now rang with a different meaning. The slideshow, the toast, the seating chart, even the order of speeches, it had all been orchestrated. I remembered my father's cold words. We're trying to protect Leo from your emotional decisions. I realized then that they had never seen me as capable of leading this family's future. They only saw me as a liability. I opened my old shared email account with David. He never changed the password. He always assumed I wouldn't care enough to check. Inside the drafts folder, I found emails he had written but never sent. Notes to himself, records of conversations with my father. One draft read, discussed revised trust structure with William. Elena, not a factor. Focus on Leo's educational plan and property deed timeline. Another said, Rosemont event confirmed as announcement venue. Use public pressure to neutralize objection. My stomach turned. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a coordinated removal, a corporate-style extraction of the inconvenient shareholder. I reached out to Aunt Margaret, who answered immediately. I told her everything. She wasn't surprised. He did it to me too, she said. Different details, same methods. I know a lawyer who can help. Someone outside your father's circle. The next morning, Jasmine and I met with Jennifer Lowell, a sharp, unassuming attorney with a firm handshake and a mountain of experience handling high-conflict family estates. After reviewing the evidence, she looked up and said, This is one of the most calculated manipulation attempts I've seen. But they made mistakes. The recordings, the digital footprint, the misuse of Leo as leverage, it all works in your favor. Over the next few days, we filed legal orders to freeze any transfers involving trust assets and property titles that bore my name. Jennifer drafted a cease and desist regarding unauthorized custody petitions. We also submitted notice to the Foundation Board that any restructuring involving Leo would require my consent as legal guardian. Jennifer warned me, Your father will not take this quietly. Expect pushback, expect manipulation, expect charm turned into threats. But you're in a strong position now. Jasmine insisted on helping build the timeline of events. She color-coded each document, cross-referenced quotes from the recordings, and even drafted a chart mapping out the family's shift in attention and favor. Watching her was like seeing a young version of myself, only sharper, braver, and more disciplined than I had ever been at her age. We kept Leo shielded from the storm as much as possible, but he noticed the tension. "Grandpa says I should come live with Dad soon so I can go to a better school," he said one night while drawing at the table. I kept my voice calm. "Do you want that?" He looked uncertain. "I don't know. He says I'd have more space and cool stuff, but I'd miss you and Jazz, and my room, and our cat." I smiled gently. "That's okay. You're allowed to be confused. Just remember, no one gets to decide your life without you." His eyes lit up. "Like how I picked my birthday cake this year." "Exactly." I tucked that moment away as proof. Proof that I wasn't just fighting for custody. I was fighting for clarity, for balance, for Leo to grow up with truth instead of manipulation. And I was doing it with Jasmine beside me, my unexpected ally, my mirror, my guide out of blindness. We were quiet. We were methodical. We were no longer playing the role they wrote for us. After 2 weeks of silence, my parents requested a meeting. The message came through a mutual acquaintance, formal and oddly phrased. They preferred not to involve attorneys if possible. I agreed under one condition. The meeting would take place at Jennifer's office and she would be present. Jasmine asked to come as well. I hesitated, but she insisted. I need to hear them say it. I need to look them in the eye. On the morning of the meeting, I wore a gray pantsuit I hadn't touched since my early teaching days, plain and neat. Jasmine wore navy blue and tied her hair back. She looked older than 14. Stronger. My parents arrived 10 minutes late, as expected. My father was in a tailored blazer, my mother in pearls. David was not with them. They sat across from us at the long wooden table. My father began. "Elena, this is all unnecessary. We were simply planning for the future." Jennifer responded before I could. That future did not include the legal guardian of Leo, nor did it respect her role in the estate. My mother cut in. "We were trying to create stability. You've always been so unpredictable." Jasmine's voice broke the air. "You mean she didn't let you control her?" My mother turned sharply. "Jasmine, this is not your place." Jennifer leaned forward. "Actually, it is. She's the witness to many of the statements and actions in question. We have audio and photographic documentation of intent to manipulate custody and redistribute assets without consent." My father's jaw clenched. "That's enough. You're making this a scandal when it could have been a family transition." I looked at him squarely. "No. You made this a business deal. You replaced your daughter with your son-in-law. You tried to take my son." My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. Jasmine watched me with steady eyes. My father shifted in his seat. "What do you want?" Jennifer slid a document forward. "A signed agreement that confirms Elena's sole authority over Leo's education and living arrangements. Restoration of the original inheritance structure. A formal statement withdrawing support from David regarding trust oversight." My parents exchanged glances. My mother's voice dropped. "And if we refuse?" Jasmine answered. "Then you'll get public exposure, and us, always, watching." The silence that followed was thicker than any courtroom I had ever imagined. Eventually, my father reached for the pen. He didn't speak, just signed. My mother hesitated but followed. It was done. They left without looking back. Jasmine let out a long breath and leaned into my side. I didn't say a word. I just held her. In the weeks that followed, things began to settle. The paperwork was finalized. David sent a carefully worded message withdrawing all claims to Leo's custody and property access. Jennifer ensured that every signature was legally binding and that any further attempts to alter the family trust would require unanimous approval from all named parties. I used the breathing space to reclaim pieces of my life that had been slipping away. I spent time organizing my finances, updating my will, and establishing a college fund for Jasmine with the small inheritance I had protected. Jasmine returned to school with a new sense of purpose. She joined the debate team. She volunteered at the library. She became someone who knew exactly how to hold her space in any room. Leo started therapy with a counselor who specialized in children caught between parental conflict. Slowly, he began to understand that love wasn't measured by who gave the biggest gifts or who threw the most polished parties. It was measured by who stayed, who listened, and who let you speak, even when your words were messy. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch of our little rented house with mismatched chairs and chipped flower pots, Jasmine turned to me and asked, "Do you think they ever really loved you?" I took a long breath. I think they loved the idea of me, the version they could shape parade control. But the real me, the woman who made different choices, who left David, who teaches poetry and believes in questions, that version scared them. She nodded slowly. "That's the version I like." I smiled and reached for her hand. Me too. And for the first time in years, I believed it. Not as a shield, not as a performance, but as a truth that had been hard-earned. The kind of truth you don't find in toasts or photo slideshows or silver anniversary cakes. The kind you only find when you're willing to walk away, even from the people who raised you, especially when they're the ones who forgot who you really are. A year later, on the anniversary of that night, Jasmine and I sat together on the same porch watching Leo chase our new cat around the yard. The air smelled like honeysuckle and the sky was beginning to shift into soft purples. Jasmine held a cup of tea and stared at the horizon for a long moment before asking, "Do you think they'll ever try again?" I didn't have to ask who she meant. I thought carefully before answering. Maybe. People like that don't change. But they do get quieter when they know you're paying attention. She nodded slowly. I just don't get it. They have money, power, reputation. Why try to take more? Why lie? I looked at her, this girl who had seen more than a child should have, and I said, because it was never about the money. It was about control, legacy, ego, about punishing those who made different choices. And maybe, just maybe, they believed they were protecting something important. But they weren't. They were protecting an image, not a family. Jasmine's jaw tightened. They really thought they could erase you. I shook my head. No, they didn't need to erase me. They just needed to make me irrelevant. That's how power works when it hides behind politeness. It doesn't scream. It just quietly replaces. Jasmine set her cup down and leaned into me, but it didn't work. Because I noticed. I smiled, kissed the top of her head. Because you noticed. You paid attention when I couldn't, and you trusted your gut when I ignored mine. She looked up at me. Do you think Leo understands now? Not yet. But one day he will. And when he does, he'll know we never stopped fighting for him. Not with yelling. With facts. With presence. With love. The kind that doesn't need to perform. Just show up. Always. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What do you think was the most important thing you learned?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the fading light, at my son's laughter, at the girl beside me who had become my greatest teacher. Then I said, "That family isn't always the people who share your name. It's the people who see you, hear you, believe you, and stay. Even when the room gets cold, even when the slideshow skips your face, even when everyone else claps for the wrong version of your life." She smiled. I think I learned that too. And as the sun slipped down, I knew the real legacy I wanted to leave was already growing inside her. Courage, clarity, and the quiet wisdom to know when something is wrong, even when everyone around you pretends it's perfectly fine.